Okay, so we are live. I am Matthew Schutte here with John Keldon, and this is our second time doing Sceenius sessions.
Yep.
John, I'll let you take the lead.
Yeah, I see if we can sort of make some sense of this thing called cards. I just sort of took the first one, and it says information. So that's the title of the first card. Yeah. And the text says networks of cause and effect within a system. So, I mean, for my first guess here is this is something to do with.
But John,
yeah, sure. Go on.
Cards, but you didn't give me a topic.
The topic. The Sceenius session is kind of not always sort of needs to be premised by a topic, right? But
I thought that our formula was pick a topic, then pull a card, discuss, then pull another card, and invite the audience to discuss.
Yeah, I mean, we could. I mean, because then the first card is kind of the meta card to actually tell us that we need to put the topic up, right? So the topic could then be, I mean, I have reason to try to teach myself to sort of not do the why question, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if we sort of instead go with the where to, I mean, where to with the cards. So these sessions can then be sort of improv participatory sense making. I mean, all card sessions. And since we are aiming to do kind of short, pithy, really brilliant ones, that means that we need to sort of figure out the cards as we go.
Yep.
And obviously that means that the first card, information, cause and effect within networks, it's a bit of a tricky thing because no one actually knows what the information is. I mean, if you ask Shannon here from 1948, he has got his definition of information. If you ask Gregor Bateson, he would have a different one. You and I could possibly have two different takes on the information, which, and there's also a third definition of information, right? For anyone watching these ends, what do they take away from this, right? That's also information. So, but I mean, cause and effect, even though you and I know that that's kind of a fairly iffy thing, it's still kind of cool, right? If we do something really great, and if someone picks up something of value from us, and that was the sort of the effect, right? We had, right?
Sure, but I'm gonna try to. So I'm gonna argue on behalf of us sticking to the formula that we had mapped out.
Yeah.
Because I feel like if we have a long conversation about the structure of this podcast every time we do the podcast, it's not an interesting podcast, right?
Okay. Yeah. Cool.
Is this thing should be 5 minutes long, maybe 10.
Yeah.
And it starts with you not having turned over a card, but instead creating some topic or question, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And you throw that out there, and then we flip over a card, and we riff. I make some comments. We have a little discussion. Then we flip over a second card, and we invite the audience to participate in the comments section. And that's it. That like boom, 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 done.
Yeah, yeah, cool. Now we could sort of scratch that sort of first intro here, right? So
afterwards, we can cut off the front half. So I'm going to go ahead. Well, actually, I'll let you take a moment. I want you to start a new deck. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Start a new deck. Don't turn over the first card yet. Share the link with me for that new deck. And then before you turn over the card, give me a topic.
Yeah. Good. And new deck. And there you go.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're going to have a topic, and then we take cards to riff on, given that topic. Last card, well, the third card, I could say, for the audience to weigh in on, right? So that's the formula. I'd still like to go with participatory sense making, both in terms of you and me kind of actually sort of doing action, reflection, learning on the fly and riffing on the cards, and for the others in the audience sort of weighing in on the third card.
So you want the topic to be participatory sense making?
Well, applied to something.
I think the whole structure of this thing is participatory sense making.
Yeah, it's kind of too wide. Yeah.
Right. That we're having a conversation and then we're trying to pull other people into the conversation, right? So
Yeah.
what do you want the topic to be for today?
Hey, it's a good one. We could have the topic called small steps.
Sounds good. Okay. So I'm going to pretend that we're starting the recording right now, and I'll edit it to here.
Yeah, sure.
All right.
Okay.
So I'm Matthew Shooting. Oh, I'll start again because I was hearing you as well.
Yeah, sure. And I'm John Keldon, and we're going to have a...
Wait. I'm going to start again.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm Matthew Shooting, and I'm here with John Keldon. This is Sceenius Sessions. I think this is the second time. John, what is it that we're going to be, what's our topic for today?
Today we're going to talk about small steps, and we're going to use the cards to riff on to see if we can make any sense of that.
We pick a topic, then using the software at Sceenius.com, John flips over a card that sort of inspires us to respond to that card in relation to the topic of the day. Then we're going to flip over another card after a bit of discussion and invite the audience to participate in the comments.
Yeah.
Okay, so small steps. First card.
First card is... I mean, honestly, this is a brand new deck, and I got the card Information, Networks of Cause and Effect within the System.
Great.
So, you first or me?
Sure, I'll go first.
Yeah.
So, small steps. My head initially goes to how learning happens within any system. And as I understand it, learning is basically a pair of processes, generation and curation, right? And you can have individual humans learning by trying different actions and or trying different neural pathways, and then when they find something that works, they reinforce that pathway to the detriment of alternatives. And so that becomes sort of a curative side. So you have the generation side, and then the curation is the selection or reinforcement of effort along pathways that have proven useful. Now that is the same, as I understand it, I see that as operating the exact same way across all different coherence layers, whether it's a human, a company, an ecosystem, a species, etc. But the process is always these tiny little actions. It's always small steps, right?
Yeah.
And from a strategy perspective, my understanding of this is constrain the size of risk so that you can enable risk taking, right?
Yeah.
If you can take tiny risks, then you can try new things, get feedback from the environment without it being, fatal to you, right?
Almost as if you can take on more risk by making many small bets.
That's right.
Yeah.
I
mean, it's also good to say that you can actually make for more fluid movement by making many small bets, making many small steps. Given that the text was kind of networks of cause and effect, this means that you can clue yourself in by obviously strategy. I mean, you're going somewhere, right? With this information, it leads to something. Otherwise, it wouldn't be information. But also the cause and effect, kind of once you sort of get the card in play, you place your bets on the table, right? Then something is set in motion, and we will never fully know what got set in motion. I mean,
and all we are able to steer on the basis of is the feedback that we are capable of sensing, right? And
yeah.
so it's only what we have the sensory capacity to perceive that we will be able to take into account. That said, it doesn't have to be something that we are conscious of, right? Like ecosystems end up steering in ways that there's not like a human-ish consciousness guiding them. It's literally the stuff that didn't work ain't there no more.
Yeah.
None of the individual entities within the system need to understand why that is or need to have decided to kill things up. No, it's an emergent outcome.
Yeah. I mean, eventually, possibly, this sort of emergent nature we could allow to affect our very framing itself. Right? I mean, a classical example is someone says, Matrix style, do you want to take the blue pill or the red pill? And then we could just say, if we are clever, right, I'll have the green one, thank you, right? And suddenly we are just sort of thinking on our feet, and we are just, So, and even though it's actually, there isn't any green pill possibly, right? And if we still think that, we have still gained sort of an additional degree of freedom. So this whole cause and effect is possibly not felt as, sensed as kind of a ton of bricks. Like, oh dear God, should I do this or that? Right? And then less stress, and that creates a virtuous feedback cycle where we kind of less stress, we get better options and so on. It's kind of, but but I mean, information is one of those.
There's
yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I always almost dread when I get that card, right? Because it's kind of a rabbit hole, right? Our minds are sort of geared almost to worry. I mean, do I have enough information? Which is a dangerous question to ask yourself, right? Kind of reflect on, is my dashboard perfect, right? And it never is. So
no, and it doesn't need to be.
No.
Right? It just needs to be good enough.
Yeah.
And if it's good enough that it allows you to steer, then you're golden.
Yeah.
And this is sort of interesting because I've been, thinking about a topic that I occasionally revisit a fair bit over the last week, and that's the concept of perspective. And how when you get into quantum physics and things like that, it becomes pretty apparent that perspective dictates what is perceived, right? That there's not some God view of the system where these are all the things happening in the system. It would almost be more accurate, or at least an alternate way of describing it, that there are an infinite number of outcomes actually happening simultaneously in space-time, and we perceive particular sets of those.
Yeah.
And I had an odd thought the other day about how it may be the case that I've thought about this a number of times in the past. I have no idea if this is right? But it was basically, it may be that death is only experienced by others, always, because we aren't capable of perceiving our own death. And so in a universe where we die, where that, I got run over by the car or something, I don't actually perceive that experience. There might have been the alternative one where I came really close to being run over by the car and I perceived that, or the one where I got hit by the car and I went into a coma, but later I woke up. But those all end up being, it may be that other people would have experienced me dying in that one, but from my experience, and so I was trying to bridge this beyond just a human mind standpoint and think about it as, oh, from the perspective of any coherence layer, its own death never gets experienced.
No, the whole coherence thing kind of is moving outside of our strictly personal individual field, right? I mean, otherwise it wouldn't sort of be much of a coherence. I mean, we could argue that there would be some kind of internal coherence, but in any meaningful sense of the word, it stretches beyond, right? And then beyond, you can just sort of extend the word beyond and so on, right?
None of these things are, like, no coherence layer is an actual thing, right? Like, it's not as if it's some solid boundary that separates it from the rest of the world. No, it's just a useful way of perceiving stuff because it happens to sort of coordinate or work together well, right? Like the various parts of my body, when I lift up my hand, my fingers come with, they don't just stay on the table.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. It's not that they couldn't just stay on it. If I chopped off a finger, like, it might stay on the table. But when you talk about information, it is really closely tied to perception, which is very, very dependent on perspective, on where you are viewing the situation from, what the things are that you are sensitive to, what the risks are that you are sensitive to, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. I mean, there's actually even a physical counterpart to this when they look at rapid eye movement, when they actually sort of measure where we are sort of looking at any given moment. And it turns out that normally our eyes sort of dart in any which kind of direction all the time, right? So kind of scanning or focusing or zooming in, zooming out, and all kinds of things. And we seem to be cool with that, right? Kind of like mad people sort of constantly darting around, right? And this corresponds also with the mind that does that all the time. So there's also even neuroscience proof, at least some beginning one, that when we have an idea, the rest of the brain then kicks in and says, nah, right? So it just kills it, right? So, okay, so that wasn't the good idea. And then if this becomes a really great idea, then the rest of the synapses joins in and says, yeah, okay. So they're kind of an instant voting procedure. And suddenly it sort of grows momentum and it grows and grows and grows. And yeah, actually, that is really cool idea. And then after a couple of fraction of seconds, which in the brain's way of reckoning counts for hundreds of thousands of processing cycles, right? It's kind of a lot.
Yeah.
Kind of big election process. I mean, the whole brain sort of a primary thing kind of before vetting the candidate. And then the conscious is sort of brought into the party. Yeah, okay, we'll go with option number 3, right? And then loads of other things were sort of very briefly considered and just discarded almost immediately. And I mean, that is, if you actually sort of would look and slow down the whole thing, that is what's going on in everyone's brains all the time, right? So, I mean, then actually death could then be kind of the Buddhist view, right? Kind of the bardo thing, kind of a temporary holiday away from all that sort of commotion, right? And then we get to come back, and actually kind of, you could see that kind of then sleep is kind of the dress rehearsal for that sort of constant barrage of information, right? But I mean, the cause and effect thing is that is sort of scaffolding of the perspective, or rather, if it's the perspective that is scaffolding the cause and effect. It's, for me, this is, I mean, I've been wrestling for this for months now and then I just need to let it go because I can't really find the Archimedean leverage point, right? Which one is it? Where does it actually start, right? Do I choose a perspective and that sort of kicks in the kind of karma chain, or am I just sort of going through my own karmic emotions, and then that provides sort of now and then with events as external perspectives, right? That I'm just sort of happen to play up. But at any given moment, I actually try to actually kid myself as if I now and then I can actually sort of choose a given perspective. Right? I mean, I'm funny like that. I want to sort of pretend as if I am kind of having an individual consciousness, right? It's helps me through the day, right?
It's really important to do so, right? Like, it may not be the case that we have self-will. Like, that might not be, if our bodies had exactly the same atomic structure and shape, it's 1 second ago, and the world around us does what it does, then we're going to move into the next second without change. Like, we are. Sam Harris wrote a book called Free Will that kind of touches on this, right? That you might not have free will, but at the same time, it's really, really useful to think you have free will.
Yeah.
It leads you to live a different life, to experience, you make different decisions, etc. And again, nature doesn't give a damn about true. It only cares about useful. So we take a shape. We've got a biological inheritance. We have neural structures, etc., that lead us to want to have impact, to want to feel meaningful, to feel like we have agency, etc., etc., etc. Because the ones who didn't, they're gone. They got taken out by a neighbor, or when times got rough, they just hunkered down and died instead of going out and searching for water for the tribe or whatever. So it doesn't mean it's right. It doesn't mean it's true. It just means it was useful.
Yeah.
But so yeah, I think you are not alone in wanting to feel like you have agency and all that.
I kind of like that, because that sort of pretend, or we could call it play, right? I mean, as if we can sort of riff on these cards that sort of got drawn by random. But what if that is kind of actually kind of fairly close to free will, right? Because actually, if we did draw it on random, and we can respond to that and make meaning of that, then we basically just prove that, hey, our minds, if we're sort of clever enough and sort of got to sufficient coffee enough, then we work as sort of a negentropy machines, right? We can create order out of sort of any which kind of random stuff we come across, whether it's cards or you and me talking or meeting other people, right? Or selling business ideas or whatnot. And even though on sort of a deeper philosophical layer, and even deeper still, kind of coherence layers and kind of ultimate reality, it's just sort of made up. It's kind of a useful illusion, right? It's kind of just the universal flux. Yeah. It might still matter that these sort of local islands of order, of form, of meaning, of value, they actually might. I mean, I saw a video by Alan Watts the other day, which is always dangerous to watch that, right? And then he put something in a fairly short thing. He said, nature of reality is transactional. And that just felt intuitively right to me, right? Yeah, finally someone who could put this into kind of a very short, concise thing, right? Because then there's no a priori way of separating information from cause and effect. It's the transaction.
That's right.
Yeah, it's the doing that's the thing, right?
Yeah. John, should we go ahead and pull a second card and invite the audience to participate?
Yeah, sure. The next card says promise, a commitment to do something.
All right.
Which I sort of just said with the Alan Watts quote, right? But I mean, here
there's some ways that people could go down, but let's not cut them off.
Yeah.
So for those of you at home, instead of us talking through this one, we're going to ask you to. Please write something in the comments. Let us know what your thoughts are on how this concept of promise, and then the subpart is a commitment to do something, how that relates to information and the larger topic of small steps.
Yeah.
We'll see you next week, John.
Great stuff.